So hopefully you did receive a training announcement. So as I had mentioned, today's training is focused on UST System Repairs. And specifically, we'll be getting into maintenance, repair, and replacement definitions under the 2015 federal regulation, and what states might want to be considering as they're getting into revising their own regulations. Also be hearing from manufacturing side with Greg and Paul. They'll be discussing maintenance and replacement of both entry boots and spill buckets. Also their manufacturer recommendations for repairs and the evaluation of repairs, including examples of what would constitute a good repair versus a bad repair. So hopefully some awesome photos for you to see today as well. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and hand it off to our first speaker today. His name is Zach Hope, and again, he's the Release Prevention Section Supervisor with Colorado OPS.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Hope, and first I want to just acknowledge how fortunate we are really in this industry to have opportunities for training like this, and thank Drew and New EPIC for organizing them and keeping the tradition alive there. And also thank Tim Smith with EPA, who's one of our panelists, but he helped prepare the content that I'm working on, just the first few slides here to introduce the topic, and is really a guiding light for all of us in the industry, and we wouldn't know what to do without him, really, so thank you, Tim. So,
oh, you guys are in trouble. Oh, my goodness.
Somebody should have muted you, I think. But, all right, good. So I'll move on. And so obviously repairs are not new to either the industry or regulation. What we want to do today is discuss the variety of repairs that are available and in practice and narrow some of the gray areas. So the goals for the few slides I've got to start things off here are to introduce the topic for our main presenters, define the terms of maintenance, repair, and replacement, and also to really primarily my purpose is to prompt state representatives on the call here on the webinar to consider how your states have defined repair in your regulations and how you implement the requirements that surround them. And so, you know, we've talked a lot about the new federal UST requirements, of course, and the periodic testing and inspections that are now being required are going to prompt a lot of repairs. And so we thought it was very important to have a training session dedicated primarily to repairs, the good, bad, and ugly kind of thing, so that we can all learn again, how to apply them in our states as we may change regulations and see more of the necessity for repairs. So as we get into defining terms here, maintenance, repair, and replacement, maintenance is, as it sounds, just kind of the normal upkeep. These definitions come from federal regs, and I know in Colorado they have been carried over to our regs for the most part without difference, but of course states may have different definitions here and there, but the point is to point out the federal definitions so that states can consider how they apply them. And so maintenance really is obviously the normal upkeep, and in fact the federal regulations point out several times that equipment must be maintained and or calibrated in accordance with manufacturer's instructions. So that's one thing to consider with maintenance, is that there are sometimes instructions that can be applicable. Repair, which is what we're going to focus on today, is to restore to proper operating condition, as it says there. That's the critical part of repair, and it really applies to just about any UST system component. The other important part to point out about repairs is that with the new regulations, we included the language there, or has failed to function properly. So previous to the 2015 regulations, repair was linked to a component that had caused a release, as you can see there, but we as a country adopted the regulation to include or has failed to function properly, which is very important as we get into many of these repairs with the new requirements. And also important to note is that many repairs require tightness testing or an applicable type of testing within 30 days of the repair. And to replace is fairly straightforward in the definitions in the federal UST regs. It applies to tank and or to piping, and it is, as it would suggest, to replace. So pretty straightforward definition there. And because it's limited so explicitly to tank and piping, there could be some gray area in there about what else could apply to the word replace. And it may be state specific to some degree, but consider that as well as you're looking into your regulations, that you can have some gray area, and that replace could prompt a requirement, of course, to rely on the installation standards for certain equipment as well. So that could be an important aspect. But we are focusing today on repairs, and so at the core of the federal UST regulation is this concept that if a component is not functioning properly, it is not meeting the requirement of the regulation. So, for example, if overfill prevention device is not functioning as intended, then you don't have overfill prevention, to put it very simply. And the thing to keep in mind there as well is that a repair is made necessary when a component is not functioning properly, and that a repair needs to prevent releases, as you can see there, due to structural failure or corrosion, and this is all from federal UST regulations again. So that's an important function of a repair, is to prevent the releases. And also in that definition is the requirement that they be conducted in accordance with the National Code of Practice. And there are several listed that go into specific equipment or tank types or materials. And also of note there is that PEI is considering working on a standard for repairs that would cover workmanship and quality materials and things like that. And it's an important part of this webinar that we'll be hearing from our speakers later about. So look forward to that. Also in repairs, in the UST federal regulation, there are several component-specific requirements that you may remember, one of which that's been there, for example, is metal piping that has released product cannot be repaired, for example. So that piping would have to be replaced. And as usual, there is a record-keeping requirement for repairs for owner-operators. So really, this is what, my brief introduction here. I hope that you're left with these questions, considering them as you look into your regulations. How does your state define repair? Is it just simply a straight out of the UST federal regulation, or do you have other requirements associated with the repair, or do you get more specific in your state, or should you? Also important to consider is a notification process for some of these repairs. Some of them can be quite significant, and does your state or should your state consider requiring notification, maybe not quite permitting of sorts, but at least some kind of notification for some of these repairs? Are there repairs that you, as a state, would like to know about beforehand, right? Are there repairs that you would rather have done after a piece of equipment is tested, for example? Is it important to know if a piece of equipment had integrity prior to repairing it? And also, do some repairs require other actions? For example, there I have written a cracked spill bucket, for example. So if a contractor or a tank owner identifies a cracked spill bucket, does your state or should your state require a, an assessment associated with a suspected release, in addition to, of course, a repair or replacement. So consider those things too as we get into our main presentations here. Again, they're going to cover specifics of sump entry, boot, and wall repairs, spill bucket repairs, some of the good, bad, and the ugly, and talk about that potential code of practice to help us narrow that gray area on repairs. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Drew.
Yep.
And we'll get on with the feature presentations.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Zach, for setting the stage today. And I think Zach's right. Kind of the idea here is maybe as questions are coming up, they might be answered by our speakers, our keynote speakers today, and they'll provide some sort of specific examples of what you might be considering and thinking about. So no questions as of yet, and just a friendly reminder, feel free at any time to just send me questions through the chat function, and when the time comes, I'll let the speakers field those questions. So thanks so much, Zach. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Greg Barnes, and Greg's the Director of Sales at Diversified Products Manufacturing.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. As they said, my name is Greg Barnes. I'm with Diversified Products. We're out of Orville, California. First, I just want to give you a little quick rundown, a little bit about our company, and then we'll get into one of our repair fittings or replacement fitting, however you guys want to word it. Just to start out with, we were founded as a Weaver company in 1991. Our first product we rolled out was a centralizer product. In 1996, Chevron came to us asking us to build a repair boot for them for a refinery in California, and we did that in 1996, got us started in the repair business. Also in 1996, we UL listed Alcrin for our products, which is the rubber part of the new construction boots that we manufacture. 2002, DPM acquired Weaver. In 2003, we introduced a product we call DBF2, which is polysulfide fill material. We like to refer to that as our magic sauce. So we put that stuff on everything. And in 2005, we UL listed FuelThane and DBF2. FuelThane is a rubber product that is clear rubber that we manufacture split repair products with as well. And as of now, we have over 3 million Alcrin entry fittings and test reducers installed in the marketplace worldwide. So we've been around for a while and have evolved into a major player when it comes to the repair products. Our products have evolved over the years from the Chevron repair product that we made. It was great when it came to a straight-on pipe. Once we got into the retail market, we realized that most people didn't put pipes in straight. Everything seemed to come in at an angle, or they'd mount it too close to the sump wall or too close to the sump bottom. So we had to evolve our repair fittings to adapt. The polyglass fitting that I'm going to go over with you today comes in two forms. There's a universal fitting that will work on just about any penetration fitting out there. What we found out, though, the guys were in the sumps. If it was a studded fitting, they were in there with grinders and hacksaws and creating sparks and creating a very unsafe work environment. So we decided to come out with this repair product that is for a studded fitting. That's what I'm going to share with you today. It's our most recent product. And first of all, I just want to state that there's basically two bolt patterns out there. OPW has a bolt pattern all of their own, and then everybody else seems to be pretty universal. For these fittings, we make a 4-stud, an 8-stud, and a 10-stud fitting. So don't have some of our other products, you might have 100 different configurations for that product, but this limited it, and it makes it so much easier for the contractors. So the PGS polyglass repair kits are used to repair studded penetration fittings. Pre-installation items that your contractor will need to do is to prepare all the surfaces to be bonded prior to completing the installation steps. And I go over the warranty information. Failure to follow each step will void the warranty. It may result in a premature failure of the penetration fitting. Adhere to the following installation instructions for each step of the installation. Bonding to fiberglass or HDPE sumps. Clean and sand all surfaces to a smooth, even surface. Then clean with the DBC2, which is our cleaner. Remove all gel coat or glazing. So if it's a fiberglass sump and it's got a gel coat on it, it needs to be cleaned off all the way down to the fiberglass. When you're done with all the sanding, clean and spray all surfaces to be bonded with the DBC2 cleaner and wipe it off using the clean, dry cloth. Always be clean and dry.
Hey, Greg, this is Drew. Real quick, if you could just speak up a little bit, that would be great. I think some folks are having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I think that's a little better. Thank you.
Okay. The fitting shown is sealed to the sump exterior. Some manufacturers have a fitting that is sealed to the interior wall under the metal stud. To repair, remove the metal ring and slide it back over the existing pipe because you're going to use that again. You're going to cut off the existing boot. The rubber boot will be cut off. Step 2, you're going to sand all bonding surfaces. Remove all debris and gel coating. Cut off the amount of ESP4, which we call super putty, diversified super putty, to be used. You're going to roll and knead it until you get a consistent gray color. You're going to form a membrane using this putty. Apply sufficient amount of putty between the pipe and the sump wall. You do not want to overfill. Less is better, just enough to create the seal. Step 3 is going to prepare an epoxy the polyglass ring. I like to refer to this as a mold. This is going to hold the actual product that's going to seal the sump. You'll spray it with the DBC2 cleaner. You're going to wipe it, or you can let it air dry, the fitting and sump. Cut the polyglass ring approximately equally between 2 stud holes to slip it over the pipe. You're going to apply a chemical product called DEB, the epoxy bonder. Apply it to the bonding surface and spread it evenly. Wrap the split polyglass ring around the pipe and slide it over the existing studs. Replace the metal ring that you removed earlier over the studs and install the new 1/4" 20 flange nuts supplied in the kit. Snug the plate to the polyglass ring using the new flange nuts. The install kit will come with 2 cans of the epoxy bonder. You're going to open both of those cans, add the contents of the smaller can of hardener, part B, to the larger can of resin, part A, and stir it with the wooden stir stick provided. When properly blended, the DEB epoxy is a consistent gray color and is ready to cure. When using on vertical surfaces, allow a few minutes for it to set up sufficiently to keep the epoxy from running. Especially when it's warm outside, folks, it'll tend to sag a little bit on you, so if you let it sit for a little bit, it'll start to stiffen up and it makes it a lot easier to work with. You're going to use a spatula or other item to apply the DEB epoxy. Install enough DEB to fill the space between the bonding ring and the pipe. Fill the gap between the PGS series bonding ring and the pipe with the DEB epoxy. Once you're done, you're going to paint it with the DBF2, 1/2 inch beyond the repair on both the sump wall and the pipe to complete the installation. Hydrostatic testing may be performed 1 hour after you paint it. That's what a completed repair will look like. You'll notice as you go, it can be used on the fiberglass, the poly sumps, and all different kinds of pipes that there is out there. That's all I got, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Greg. And I just sent a message out to the audience. Just a reminder, I know Greg had some pictures and specific sort of steps there. So if there are technical questions about that process, use that chat function. Send me, whatever your questions might be about that, and I'll get Greg back on the microphone to see if he can answer your questions. So feel free to shoot at any time. Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to today's third speaker. Paul Reber is the National Sales and Technical Support Manager with Icon Containment Solutions.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it. We welcome the opportunity to be part of this discussion, and as stated, my name is Paul Reber. I'm the National Sales Technical Support Manager with Icon. Icon was established specifically for the development and manufacture of sump leak repair applications. And so our whole exclusive purpose is to help UST owners and their service contractor return the fuel storage containment sumps to a compliance situation and meet the regulatory expectations that are part of that. So I want to take a little bit of a more general approach to the sump containment leak issue. Our objective, obviously, is to take the situation from a non-leak type scenario to totally leak type, regardless of whatever the issue is. What we're talking about here in terms of the containment sumps are the tank and transition sumps, dispenser sumps, and spill containment. There are a lot of other repairs that can occur in a UST system. Most of the issues with other equipment outside of the sumps are typically addressed by manufacturer-specific repairs, whereas the sumps really have no specific instruction or options offered by the original manufacturers. And so it's left, in many cases, to the ingenuity of a contractor or limits placed on it by the regulatory side or manufacturer offered solutions. So I guess the real question is, why repair at all when it comes to containment sumps? And in answer to that, some might be asking, why not just require replacement, which would have them shut the site down, dig everything up, and replace it? Well, the obvious answer to that is that it's a very expensive process to go through reconstruction. And unless really necessary, there needs to be, for the sake of well-being of the UST owner, an opportunity for something that's more cost-effective than reconstruction. The interesting thing about the evolution of all of this is that, in answer to this question, has petroleum equipment workmanship standards, environmental regulation, and sump repair specifically evolved over the past 30 years? You heard the history of DPM here shortly, and there have been many other companies that have come to the table with a variety of solutions. And, you know, the answer to that is obviously yes. There have been a lot of changes and evolution in the approach, the materials, and the applications. At least some parts of it have evolved. Obviously, when it comes to the containment, repairs still requires that a technician get into the existing containment to make these applications. That part probably won't change, and but there has been an evolution in the expertise and knowledge and understanding of the technicians that are involved in this type of work generally. So repair applications have evolved in the same way, and through much trial and error. We would simply say that a lot of different things have been tried in the past that probably shouldn't have. And so let's walk through just a couple of fun things that show just a few examples of the things that have tried. I put this kind of in a horror theme because they are kind of horrible. Here's you know, a patch job on a dispenser sump, horribly gone wrong. And another. Hopefully this will bring a smile to your face as you see the titles in line with these pictures. We call this one Rotten Ronnie. This is a failed repair application with who knows what, probably Bostic or some other sealant in a filled fitting with the material, really the wrong material, obviously. We call these the Dr. Goopin smears, and we see this quite often in a variety of applications where really the entire repair in these cases was dependent upon the sealant that was applied over it. And while that may work temporarily for the test, it rarely works very long term. And in these cases here, these are pictures obviously supplied to us for repair because the previous repair has not been successful. Sealant in general, while it may be adhesive, just does not have the long-term seal in these environments. And I don't believe that there is a single urethane-based sealant in the market today that would be considered compatible as a topical application for both fiberglass and poly sump leak issues. Call this the flock of ducks. Amazingly, we do see this often enough that it you just scratch your head and wonder what it was they were thinking. But, you know, again, lots of different things have been tried unsuccessfully. And a lot of learning has gone into that process, I'm sure. Foam alone, you know, the foam itself may stop the water temporarily, and it can be a very effective part of a solution, but not the complete solution. And then this is so common and very difficult to repair afterwards because it can be built up in such a way you can't even identify what the original fitting was, which makes it difficult to, again, specify a repair going forward until that's all cleaned off. But it is very, very common to find this type of repair in the field. And then these pictures have been out there for a little while, but they're just so good. I just had to share them. And, you know, maybe this is what the double wall sump was, the precursor to double wall sump. At least he has the sensor placed in the right position on the other. Just the volume would be in question here. And I'm not sure really what the whole objective was with this when other solutions could have been attempted. So what can repair look like today? We're taking a more general approach. We recognize that even though ICON manufactures some very effective solutions, that there are a variety of manufacturers in the market today that manufacture solutions. And so we'll take, again, a little bit more general approach to this, but the question really is it repairable? You know, and that's trying to get to some standards, I know, as a regulatory body about what can be repaired. The definitions that we heard earlier, you know, are very helpful in defining that we simply need to restore the sump to, you know, to make it effective in its application. And whether it's surface water entry into the sump that puts it into alarm, or sump entry fittings or structural type of problems, you know, that the considerations for whether it should be repaired or repairable, you know, are part of this discussion, I guess. I mean, it may be too far gone, you know, for it to be repaired, and what constitutes too far gone when there are solutions. Even relining of an existing poly sump is possible with fiberglass. So, you know, I think that there needs to be room in this discussion in your considerations on the regulatory side as to, you know, how we approach this repair. What is the right application for the circumstances for us is always a major consideration. We want to make sure that the good workmanship can be attained in order for the repair to be applied. It doesn't make sense, even if the application itself has the potential for success, if they can't get the access well enough to be able to make the workmanship right to make the repair. We don't want to put a contractor in a situation of, you know, of failure, you know. So one of the other considerations, will the materials last through the end life of the existing sump structure? And, you know, at least beyond testing periods, such that it's not just a one-time thing. And the problem with the sealant applications and their topical over the top is that it only gets you through a single testing period. And then who knows if it's really going to be valid after that or effective. And will it meet the regulatory requirements of the specific jurisdiction that it's being placed in? We talked about some variances in the beginning here about how states may have written language regarding repair and how it's approved, et cetera, and all those considerations are part of what ICON would consider when we're offering a repair application. Fittings are the most likely, in tank, transition, and dispenser sumps, most likely leak cause. And we see a variety of things in the market today, as you can see from this collage. Everything from the original manufactured fittings installed backwards, no fitting at all, a variety of transitions, offset, angled entries, failed previous repair applications, proximity issues that make it very difficult and are part of the cause, even just workmanship in the installation of those products, and all contribute to the cause of a leaking fitting. And so the challenge, obviously, is to find products that will fit the variety of manufactured designs and with the right materials and the right application, and accommodate the pipe where it's at today, but make the containment leak tight. And so that is, you know, what ICON's product is built around. The concept of a split repair fitting, again, means that you don't have to disconnect the pipe or excavate or replace the sump in order to bring that containment to a leak-tight condition if the leak is through fittings. And to match all the existing fitting manufacturers, as stated, with compatible and durable materials for the respective applications. And by durable, we're talking about lasting through the end life of that existing sump equipment. And then, you know, to meet EPA requirements, there should be third-party tested, proven effective applications involved in that repair. And with ICON, we do meet that requirement. So the split fitting, depending on the type of fitting, is going to require some sort of bonding or sealant to bring those components together in a way that you can wrap it around the existing pipe in place. In the case of a flexible material fitting, it's a solvent permanent weld of that material. Icon uses a material called Protex, which is a non-urethane-based material. Urethane plastics have proven really inappropriate for an in-sump environment where you have potential microbial corrosion and other, vapor and other impacts on it, aside from the liquid potential, whether it's water hydrolysis or fuel hydrolysis on the material. And so here's a few examples of the after effect of a split repair design of fitting, where you've gone from leaking fittings to non-leaking fittings and a tested leak-tight sump condition. And you can see the variety of application here for the different types of fittings that you might encounter. There's obviously a lot more than what we can depict here, but this gives you an idea of some of the things that can be done. And sometimes it's a combination of bonding components or resealing, rebonding existing components and replacing parts of those components in the repair of a fitting. In general, the idea, too, is as much as possible to maintain the same template or sump wall space and pipe space required, because of, the existing conditions may leave you not much room, and so you don't want to be taking up any more space than the original fitting did. Matching as much as possible to the original manufacturer's design. So these are true repairs. And an example here with the OPW, the housing itself and gasket could be resealed, and the rubber component portion of this replaced with a more durable material and a split bonded design for split repair. And there are times when a custom or unique application is required for the solution. Icon does manufacture custom-built fittings for these kinds of accommodations. And whether it's proximity or specific pipe or maybe even multi-pipe entry applications to accommodate the existing scenario. Again, a variety of things that you find in the field. Greg mentioned that, you just often don't see it as pristine in some of these repair situations, and with the right workmanship standard or installation standard as you do in new installation anymore. And so we see a variety of things that we have to accommodate. They're both bonded and the flexible compression seal design applications we talked about where appropriate. A bonded replacement split repair fitting can be applied to the repair to reseal the fitting. And it's not uncommon for us to see sumps with no fitting at all. And again, whether it's a compression seal fitting or a bonded sealed fitting, an application can be made to bring that back to a leak-tight condition. When it comes to sump structure repair, this is the area where it gets more challenging, because you see damage in both poly, fiberglass, and a variety of other containments, steel, and there's steel spill buckets or whatever. And so when you have minor damage, and it's defining that minor damage, what's really repairable or not here. The important thing to know is that there is a difference between a sealant, an adhesive sealant, and a structural adhesive bonder that may be specific for those materials. For example, there is a product in the market that was originally developed by 3M and packaged and labeled as Polyfuse by Icon that is a true structural adhesive plastic bonder for low-energy plastic HDPE. And it's very effective for the minor cracks, punctures, holes, seam leaks, and things of that sort in a poly sump. And it's permanent when it's applied in a dry, clean, and prepared application. An adhesive sealant can never accomplish the same type of bonding shear and tensile strength that a structural bonder will be. So there's a difference, and we try to label in a way so that it's understood what's being applied, because they can have somewhat a similar appearance in their application, but one is a true structural adhesive bonder versus the other. And so in the repair language, again, what's allowed, what's not allowed, there need to be some definitions that we will talk about here in a moment, developed such that it would allow for some of these things to occur, rather than, I mean, it just doesn't make sense for a small puncture in a plastic sump to have to replace the entire sump, disconnect everything, and shut the site down over something so minor when it could be repaired with a structural bonder. So here's some before and after. Polyfuse is a gel-like consistency, and again, when the surface is prepared properly and it's cured properly afterwards, it provides the same type of elasticity, expansion, contraction, and structural integrity as the original sump area. Here's a 12-inch floor crack, minor separation, had some holes drilled off the end to terminate those cracks, and a large patch of the Polyfuse performed over it, and it's been a permanent repair to that sump floor leak now for over several years, and you know, not showing any degradation or any potential for leak. The same thing with fiberglass. Sometimes you'll have a bond or damage or a crack, a seam leak. In this case, the collar to sump seam bond had fractured and it was leaking, and the use of an appropriate resin bonder, epoxy resin bonder, or acrylic bonder that is fuel compatible, you know, can easily repair that structure and return it to a leak-tight condition. And there are also some other applications that can be used in terms of sometimes when they're removing pipe in reconstruction, they're maintaining sumps, but they might have a hole left over in fiberglass in particular. There's an easy fiberglass patch kit rather than laying in the fiberglass, which is always more difficult to control the quality of the outcome. They can have a patch laid in to assure that they get the quality of thickness and strength and adhesion over that blank hole rather than lay in fiberglass. So just another approach to a refiberglassing of a fiberglass sump. And the bonders themselves could be used, and you can see a little combination of some things going on here to reseal this sleeve or cuff over the pipe to the sump wall where there had been none previously. And these are some unique things in some cases, but again, poly or fiberglass containments have the ability to be, even steel, have the ability to have some minor damage repair with the appropriate structural bonder. When it comes to surface water getting in, I think that that's as critical a problem, obviously, for those that are going in an alarm, to not have water coming into the sump for a variety of reasons. The corrosion itself that it can cause, and problematic to the site, and it's have an appropriate sensor. And frankly, what happens often is that you get a customer that has this problem on a recurring basis, and they become it becomes a nuisance, and as a result of that, that's a nuisance alarm to them, is the term's been used, and they'll start turning the alarm off or pulling the sensor out, and so that kind of issue, they need to protect themselves from surface water coming into the sump, and a replacement lid is possible from a variety of sources. ICON provides a product called EasyFit, which is a bonded solution to the top of an existing poly or fiberglass sump that retrofits the top with a watertight lid, and there are a number of other manufacturers out there that provide solutions that are effective as well. And so effectively taking it from a before situation where every time the rain occurs or other flow of water across the top that you get an alarm, and with a watertight retrofit lid, it's completely sealed watertight. Spill containment, really the same issue. There's such a variety of spill containment applications out there. It could be a fitting seal, a sealant application, structural bonding, but you know, depending on the nature of it, there are some minor repairs, very minor repairs that can be applied to spill containment as well to bring it back to a leak-tight condition, and that's more important to that. The spill containment is probably the biggest area of problem for most UST system owners. It requires the most maintenance and inspection, frankly, to make sure that, and it's the most likely place to have a release issue as well because of the fuel that you're dealing with there at the fill. So I think that you know, some minor repairs here are appropriate, but there are certain repairs that we wouldn't even recommend. It really depends on the scenario, and again, some of these things have to get defined out whether a state will allow repair to a spill containment or not. One of the things that you have to address regarding repair is workmanship, because the application can be perfect and the type of repair may be appropriate. That's what I should say. The challenge obviously is in getting the technician to apply it properly. Training is key to that, obviously, and so certification requirements for any kind of repair application are probably a great idea for the regulator side to assure that these applications are being applied properly. The technical support from the source of the repair materials is very important. Even parts specification service, we often see the wrong application applied to a repair, and then them scratching their head wondering why that didn't work. And you know, some of that comes again back to the training and the technical support, but having the opportunity for a contract organization to say, this is what I've got, what do I need specifically, and get that direct from the source of those that manufacture is important. And then on-site training, you know, nothing replaces in programs where you're getting new contractors involved, an on-site training experience to help them work through that. And all these things are options that are available for contractors through ICON. We do our basic certification through this type of format. It's a little more interactive, but it's a WebEx-based training where we go through specific product applications, installation instructions, expectations, and open the door for the remaining technical support that they can get through the phone while they're right on site. We do a lot of video type interaction with them on site, pictures coming back and forth when they're there. And then, you know, offering the parts specification applications. You get a repair that is required, and they send us pictures, a little bit of information, forms that facilitate the organization of that so that they get back a very specific repair application. And I think that really has made a difference in making the application successful. And then the on-site training is appropriate for different programs to make sure that those technicians really understand what we're trying to accomplish there, and so they get it right. I want to talk about the importance of third-party testing as required by EPA. And the language actually in the repair of containment requirement talks about an or third-party compatibility testing or manufacturer information and or manufacturer compatibility statements. ICON uses UL and other third-party testing for a variety to fill that requirement generally. But we would simply say this about third-party testing. There are many third-party testers that are valid for these applications. UL happens to be one and the most recognized. But UL is also the same private party, for-profit, third-party testing organization that brought us TCI pipe that was recalled, blue line fitting materials, having approved urethane-based materials for fittings over several manufacturers, all of which have shown failure very quickly after installation. And so they're not really the end all, and in fact, it's very difficult for a third-party tester to replicate the environment that you have in a sump. And so the experience of manufacturers like ICON and DPM and others over years of trial and error with materials and testing out materials and applications shouldn't be discounted. And so a compatibility statement from a manufacturer, which actually fills the basic APA requirement, should be considered, I would think, in this process. Although we do believe in third-party validation of some of the things, I think that just makes it, better all around to know that there have been multiple parties looking at it in different ways. But again, a third-party tester, very difficult to replicate the things that a manufacturer's been doing. Some of our testing now is going on 6-7 years continuously with the same materials, and UL at best might give it 90 days to 120 days, and mostly surrounding the material side from saturation. They can't replicate the dry conditions that are just as corrosive in many cases in a sump environment. Here's a picture of our certificate for our split repair fitting applications and some of our other repairs and our compatibility statements along the same line. We meet those requirements. We just want to put the stake in the ground that, frankly, third-party testing is at best a micro view of what the sump environment actually will require in terms of durability, and that manufacturer testing may actually be more comprehensive, more extensive, and more destructive to try to replicate those situations. And so the information that we have about these materials and how they perform goes way beyond the third party. And we would never submit anything to a third party testing knowing, unless we knew it would pass their test in the first place. So when it comes then to defining all of this and the language that a state will put into place for parameters around repair, there are some unintended consequences to language like we'll see right here, per manufacturer's recommended procedure. Now, there's certain repairs in a UST system where that applies, but when it comes to the sumps, you have such a variety of manufactured containments, the fitting, penetration fittings, and the pipe involved, and none of those had recommended procedures for repair. So it gets a little bit awkward when that language, and we're seeing a little bit of that in places, gets applied to the sump leak repair, which is beyond the interpretation of the language we understand, even by EPA. So if you take it to that extent, this is really the end road. This is it's a dead end for that UST owner because if they have a leak and they can only repair per manufacturer's recommended procedure, they're going to be replacing very expensively. And that really changes the landscape for many UST owners, and maybe that's the intended consequence. You know, we really can't decipher what the opinions of the regulatory bodies are when sometimes this sort of language comes about. And so we would simply say that the language needs to offer alternatives, and maybe they meet these requirements that we've been talking about in terms of the third party, obviously the compatibility, and some nationally recognized RP, which is what we're working toward. ICON is leading an effort right now with the support of PEI, and we've recently incorporated NLPA, the National Leak Prevention Association organization, into which has developed some RPs for tank lining and sump lining to broaden and be more specific in the RP regarding repair, which I think will really help the regulatory side have something to reference when they say, okay, we're going to allow repair and repair should be allowed, but here's the standard by which it should reach. And so that development of that RP is very important. We recognize we're working on that as quickly as we can to get that forward for comment. The objectives of a UST containment sump repair RP would obviously provide the recognizable reference point for regulators, site owners, and contractors, and would define the workmanship standards and material application standards that, you know, regarding compatibility and various things. It would have to allow, obviously, for competitive product variances so that as long as the previous bullet was met, that those applications, you know, preferences between one company or another could be argued, but we would have to, you know, couldn't be a single source type of RP, and that has to be recognized and allowable in the RP. And then, you know, bottom line, it has to meet the basic regulatory criteria for third-party and compatibility. So at a minimum, the RP would cover specifically how to address active water intrusion into the sump containment prior to any repair, because if there's a high water table, most repair applications require a dry condition in order to do the repair. So it would address that, real simple solutions to those sorts of things sometimes, but at some point that has to be addressed before the repair. I would also define the general and reasonable repairable definitions. For example, you know, a crack in a sump floor, at what point does it turn to a different type of application or not repairable at all? You know, how big? There has to be some reasonable definition to that to make that appropriate. And establish the protocols for sump fitting repairs, and there's a variety of approaches there, as you saw, between DPM and ICON even. And to define possible some structure damage repair applications we were talking about, you know, what is the repairable there, but when it is repairable, what would be the specific repair application requirements there. And to explain tank sump lid replacement, while it is not necessarily a containment issue, it is in that the lid, if you're going to replace it to keep surface water from coming in, need to meet at least some basic criteria and testing afterwards, possibly. So those things would be included in the RP. This process that we're going through, we're trying to include as many of the repair product manufacturers as possible. Several associations, PEI and NLPA specifically, but NUIPIC and SWAMO and others we'd like as regulator association representatives and specific regulators involved in comments. Manufacturers obviously be part of that too. But to bring the stakeholders together for comments so that we get a quality product that addresses things as specifically as possible in that RP, which is typical of an RP, but still leave the ability for the variables in there that we talked about. And ultimately, all of this, is for the objective of preventing a release, really, in a cost-effective way in repair versus requiring automatically that leak means replacement, which can be, again, horribly expensive and disruptive to the customer and the owner's operation. So unless that's required, this is the alternative to that, again, to prevent a release incident. So taking it from this to this is our objective, and we're just trying to find the best way to do that in conformance with all the regulatory that's out there. So with that, I'll turn my time back to Drew.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Very comprehensive part of the discussion there. I did have what's a pretty general question, and as we're wrapping up here, I do want to have time, provide time rather, for anyone out there. If you do have a question you've been holding on to for any one of our speakers, whether it's Zach, Greg, Paul, feel free to send it to me now. But getting back, Paul, not really a specific, I guess, question, but I think you showed that photo of somebody halfway into some sort of a sump. The question that I got was in regard to that. Let's see here. So is a confined space permit required for sump repairs?
I think, and I think generally yes, and that picture was meant kind of tongue-in-cheek because it doesn't show him using any safety equipment. We have no idea if he's wearing a ventilator and, the things. And so we approach it as if every one of these containments, if they're sticking their head in or they've had to climb into it, that they should probably treat it as confined space. Always it is recommended that they follow the specific safety requirements for their particular area. And we have lots of pictures where they do it right, lots of pictures where it's questionable. But I think that the RP itself, and I didn't write that there, but definitely the RP will address safety standards to make the recommendation that the contractor always follow OSHA requirements for their area.
Sure. Thank you. And again, folks, feel free to jump back for a minute. Greg, if you could unmute your microphone. Just a question, generally speaking, could you speak a little bit to the compatibility issues or considerations with your product that you were speaking about?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. What are you asking me? The compatibility to what?
I guess the product itself with any in-tanked product or fuel, if there are compatibility issues.
There's no compatibility issues. All our products are UL listed.
Okay.
Properly installed, have a 3-year warranty with them.
Great, thank you. I think I have another one coming in here. Now, I'm not sure if this is specific to first or second speaker, but maybe you could both speak to it if you do have a comment, Greg and Paul. So the question is, how do you deal with repairs where there's an active water intrusion?
There's a couple different ways you can address that. We have a product called AquaSeal. If there's not a high pressure amount of water coming into the sump that is a water activated, we also have a chemically activated grout that will seal it off long enough to do the repair. If there's a high pressure amount of water coming into the sump, you may not have any other alternative other than pump down the groundwater at some point.
Yeah,
great,
from Icon. Yes, thanks. Icon uses a product called Fast Foam, and we've done a lot with water blocking. This is an instant product. It's going to do everything it's going to do in the first 15 to 20 seconds. It does handle higher pressure pretty well, but the water intrusion may need to be mechanically held back while you're injecting the foam to allow the foam to develop on the exterior. And the volume of foam and all of that, which is a big part of our training in regards to the application, is the volume of the foam is very important to the size of the leak. But ultimately what Greg said is correct, that there are conditions where it is just more cost effective, frankly, to pump the water table down to get it to a dry condition long enough to do the repairs than to do the foam. But for spot treating and for smaller issues, definitely a water block, whether it's a combination of the instant foams or a putty or something of that sort to stop the water so you can do the repair, can be applied and has proven to be very effective in most situations.
Great, thank you both.
Now,
and again,
let me just say, follow up.
Sure.
That's never a permanent. That's never a permanent part of the repair. It's a temporary. The actual repair follows and should go over the area where that foam has been injected, so that your repair is something else that meets all the compatibility third-party testing requirements as far as materials and application. And the foam is just a step to that repair.
Sure. So for both of you, have any manufacturers, quote unquote, approved your repairs to their products?
I don't know that we've reached out to specific manufacturers.
So we've actually worked directly with 2 major manufacturers regarding warranty repair on their existing fittings. And so it ends up being a split repair design fitting exactly the same as their current fitting when they have had issues for one reason or another in those. So in that vein, we have had their approval, but not as a specific repair approval. But I think that is a misinterpretation also of some of the EPA language, in that whereas there are certain tank and pipe repair requirements for that manufacturer's procedure, there isn't that specific requirement when it comes to the containment sumps. And its repair in those situations is simply to restore that sump to its leak-tight condition. And again, you can get multiple manufacturers involved. The sump manufacturer, the pipe manufacturer, and the sump entry fitting manufacturer could all be different. And so when you repair a fitting, do you have to have the sump manufacturer's approval? I mean, you can get really into a convoluted situation over a very simple issue. And so we have to be careful about the interpretation of that language. But we repair or have repaired all manufacturers' equipment in that situation to make it leak tight again.
Thank you. So, Paul, I believe it was you. You'd mentioned a 3-year warranty. So the question is, would the warranty cover addressing contamination that may have resulted after a repair was completed, or is it a simple labor and materials warranty?
Well, for ICON, it's actually a 5-year warranty, but it is a materials warranty. What we're saying is that, and it is repair. We have to remember it is repair, but that we expect that material is appropriate and it's compatible, and you're not going to have degradation for a minimum 5 years and generally longer. And the materials are appropriate. Usually we tell customers is, listen, this is going to last through the end life, if it's applied properly, through the end life of that sump equipment. It's repair. The point at which they are going to have a reconstruction event that would replace that could be 3, 5, 10 years down the road, but it's going to be some period, longer than a new construction application, and so the material should last. And the key with warranty really is, just making sure that the customer gets taken care of, and that they accomplish what they're supposed to do there, which is to restore it to a leak-tight condition. You can run into all kinds of workmanship issues at times if people haven't followed the process, or if they were never trained prior to the application. And we try to correct those situations as we find them. Again, our objective is just to make sure that that UST system is buttoned up the way that it should be. So hopefully that answers that question.
Great, thank you. And I do see questions have stopped, so if anyone wants to send one last minute here as I'm wrapping up, I'll keep an eye on the chat bar here. So thank you so much, all of our speakers, Zach, Greg, Paul. For those of you in the audience, I'll give you a minute here. Just their email addresses are there for you if you want to continue the conversation. Encourage you to reach out